You're in a session called Wearable Trends, Past, Present, and Future. And I love doing this kind of session because I spent all day doing press interviews, answering questions, and this kind of panel, I get to ask the questions. So hopefully you guys find a lot of interesting information out of here. Listen, let me just remind you that please fill out the session survey that's on your chair or your table, because each survey that you submit, you get entered to win some awesome prizes. Also a reminder that tonight we have this incredible event planned for all of you at the Exploratorium. Last year, it was developers told us it was the hit of the show. So this year we have some really fun things planned. Okay. So let me let's introduce our panelists. Eddie Hold. Eddie is a Vice President, Connected Intelligence of the NPD Group. Karina Reese. She's Vice President, Product Leadership, Consumer Insights of Nielsen. And Jan Wassmann, who's Global Product Manager for Wearable at GfK.
Hi.
Right. Okay. So let's start off maybe asking an insightful question, and we'll have all three of our panelists provide an answer. So share with the audience an overview of how you actually do research on the wearable market, and an overview of what kind of research your company actually does. So let's start off with Karina.
Thanks, Curtis. So at Nielsen, we measure what consumers watch and what consumers buy, and we've been doing this for over 90 years. And within the wearable space, we've been tracking this for the past year and a half. And our research is really focused on, understanding, from a consumer perspective, what are their attitudes and motivations around, using wearables, and what are they looking for in the future. So we run a study 2 times a year where we're measuring attitudes and behaviors of mobile consumers. And our study is really focused around kind of wearable technology, also connected cars, connected homes, and kind of the intersection of those technologies.
Great.
All right. Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. At GfK, we usually cover with our research the whole customer journey. And with regards to the wearables, we do consumer studies, like Karina just told. So we are also asking our in our surveys why people are buying these devices or why people are not buying these devices. On the other hand, this is the part where I came from, is we track data, POS data in the retail scene. And so we have a broad understanding on 30 markets where we track wearables, especially smartwatches. So outside the US, we know what's going on in Europe, as I'm from Germany and can tell you a lot of insights on this. Furthermore, we also provide forecasting figures on a global and on a regional level. So what will be sold next year according to the information we have based on our POS data panels that we extrapolate. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great.
Okay. Hi. I work for NPD. We're best known for sales data in the US. So GfK covers the rest of the world. NPD does the sales data within the US, consumer electronics, for example. We add on top of that consumer panel data so that we can understand not just what people are buying, but also how they're using it. In the wearable space in particular, we use a couple of different surveys, using polling solutions as well as ongoing panels. And we track everything from what's available in the market through to what people are buying and how they're using it.
Great. So let's take a little bit different spin here. One of the things we didn't introduce today in the keynote was a time machine. So let's say we had a time machine and we went back a year. It would be interesting to know, what did you actually forecast a year ago? And how did your forecast actually pan out? So maybe we'll start from this side.
This one's an easy one then. We don't do specific forecasts on what people are going to purchase, but we do take a pretty good guess, which is a slightly less scientific version of a forecast, I guess. About a year ago, I mean, there really weren't that many wearables out there, particularly in the smartwatch area. So it's clearly a very, very early stage product where it was still looking for a solution. People were still trying to work out why they wanted it. So we were pretty confident that smartwatches were going to be fairly low adoption to start with. The activity trackers were a little more interesting. And as we've seen this blurring between what an activity tracker is and what a smartwatch is, it's become a little more interesting watching the evolution, let's put it that way. Digital activity trackers probably took off better than I thought, to be honest. And smartwatches were pretty much as we expected.
Yeah, I think the introduction of the first version, the Galaxy Gear, was the biggest event so far last year. And to me, it topped the expectations in terms of specifications, what it can do, and what was packed in that tiny device. So we were pretty optimistic that this market would take off with that device. Besides this, there were also the huge announcement or the huge buzz on the smart glasses world with the introduction of the Google Glass to developers. So according to our research we did at that time in October 2013, there was like the biggest buzz was about the Google Glass. So when we asked consumers in the US and in the UK, 50% had heard of Google Glass, and it was top ranked so far also as devices. So when we asked, have you ever heard of wearable devices, and we make some suggestions, 2/3 of the people we asked could at least name one device, like it was at that time the Nike Fuel Band, the Samsung Gear, and so on. Yeah.
Great.
I think, to add to what my colleagues have said, I think with respect to adoption of, the smartwatch category in particular, I mean, it's definitely been a lot lower than I think, we expected at the beginning of last year. I think just given the number of brands that have entered into the market, I think what's been, surprising for us over the course of this year is just to see kind of this revolving ranking of different brands that consumers are choosing across both the smartwatch category and then the fitness band category. So Samsung is definitely still strong in that category, but you're starting to see other brands kind of rise up to the top. And then within the fitness band category, you still have Nike, Fitbit, and Jawbone that are still top brands, but you see this kind of long tail of other brands that are kind of slowly gaining some ground. So I think what's kind of surprising is adoption is low. We're still seeing a lot of different products out in the market, but with that, kind of there's this changing of ranking of brands and what consumers are choosing.
Great. I think we're still in the early days of wearable technologies, and I think a lot of people want to know what's the demographics. Who are the type of customers who are actually looking at purchasing and using actively these kinds of devices? What's your take?
So, since we've been tracking this, it's actually been pretty interesting in terms of how that demographic has shifted over time. So I think, from our earlier studies last year, we really saw more of a 50-50 split between, males and females purchasing, both smartwatches and fitness bands. And as we've measured that over time, that's been slowly skewing towards, the millennial males. Kind of earlier this year, we saw kind of heavier adoption of males 25 to 34 with higher incomes, and then in our most recent study we're starting to see that shift again towards more kind of boomer males, so 45 plus with higher incomes. I think that's just as a result of the newer products that are out in the market and the higher price point and better functionality. But that's kind of the demographic that we've been seeing just within the smartwatch category.
So we kind of had similar results from our panel. So we also asked people in China, in Korea, and in 5 countries in total, and we saw like that 4% of them across the whole sample already possessed any wearable device, and it was 20% among the tech-friendly early adopters. So we could say the typical consumer was or is at that time still the male, tech-friendly a consumer that already owns multiple devices in his ecosystem at home, so he's really up to the new devices front.
I think you have to split out the smartwatch from the activity tracker. Smartwatch is definitely younger and male for who's buying it. The activity tracker becomes more interesting, and it's relevant because when we start to look at what people are buying smartwatches for, there are some similarities. The activity tracker skews definitely slightly older. 36 is the magical age, apparently, when we all look in the mirror and go, dang, what happened to me? I should lose weight, I should get healthy, and so you quickly join a gym, you buy a fitness tracker, and you think you're going to be cured. So that's sort of the magical age where we see this middle age point where there's definitely a boost in buying activity trackers for that sporting pedometer type functionality. And I think that'll help move the market for the smartwatches over time as well, from this younger, very early adopter market of young male up into sort of the mid-range.
Great. So, if you look at the smartwatch market today, a lot of these have a lot of features. And, Samsung, we're probably on our 6th generation already, kind of seeing what consumers are actually using and improving our products. What are you seeing that are the top features that consumers either are using today or sort of desire for the future?
Sure.
Okay, so if we compare the usage or the expectation of such a device to a year ago, it was almost like copying the functionalities of a smartphone. So most of them were telling, like, I want to receive calls. Also at that time, we saw a demand for having a standalone device. In comparison to this year, what surprised us was we asked the major functionality of a smartwatch, what would you expect of it? And the answer was overwhelmingly activity tracking. And I think this is because activity trackers are so popular because it's a unique benefit. As I said, if you compare the smartwatch, most consumers see them in comparison to a smartphone, which they already own, and don't see the unique value still because they haven't tried it out yet. So the activity tracking is the most prominent feature even on a smartwatch.
Mm-hmm. Our research is showing, pretty much the same trend. I think, originally, I think consumers, what they really wanted was email, text, and access to apps. And over time, the most common, kind of need or desire is for fitness tracking. And, with respect to fitness tracking, I think consumers want, the same types of features. They want to be able to track their mileage, monitor their sleep, monitor their heart rate. So all of those features around fitness are the same, no matter what type of device that you have. So kind of speaks to this kind of blurring of lines between the fitness band category and smartwatches, especially with this common desire for consumers to want it in kind of all in one device.
So we see it's a weird mix of functionality that all fits together into a profile of typically a runner, to take it one step further. It's make phone calls, listen to music, GPS, and the pedometer and the fitness and feature things. It's almost the profile of someone that is a runner. They want to leave their phone behind, and they still want to be somewhat contactable, but they want to take enough of that smartphone with them to do what they would usually do with a smartphone, but without carrying it.
Do you think consumers are expecting to have basically the same applications on the smartphone on their watch?
I think they start like that. I think when people first talk about the smartwatch, they get a little confused as to what it could be. And yes, there's definitely a matching to start with of everything I can do on my phone, I should be able to do on the smartwatch. Very early on, the alerting functionality is always cited as a very, very important component, right up to the point where people start using it. How many of you remember having a BlackBerry, your very first device that allowed you to have your email on your phone? And we all had the ringer on for about the first hour until we found that every 30 seconds it was buzzing because we were getting a message. So then we cut that off, and it's the same thing on the smartwatch. We all start by thinking we want alerts and notifications. We turn them on, it's a floodgate, and every 30 seconds your wrist is vibrating and it's absolutely useless. So what you think you want at the beginning and then the reality of what you actually use to, it has to be filtered out over time and become a little more rational. And I mean, the other killer thing that we see that people want is, believe it or not, to tell the time. So we did a survey, we did a man in the street interview thing last December in Times Square. And the first two people, we showed them the Galaxy Gear and we said, would you buy this product? Yeah, $300, $400. The first two people both said, absolutely. And we said, okay, why? And they said, do you know how many times we have to reach into our bag to pull out our phone to see what time it is? This will save me from doing that. There are vendors all around Times Square that will sell them a watch for $5, but they'll buy this instead.
Interesting. Anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I think once such a smartwatch becomes a replacement for a smartphone, people really see the value of it. So we have to blank out the interface challenge for a moment. But if you would not need to carry around a smartphone anymore, the benefits become more obvious because you wear it at your wrist, you do not lose it, it cannot fall down. So there are unique benefits that comes with the form factor of a wearable device. And so this was our explanation why people saw a higher benefit. In 2013 it was called a smartwatch plus. So this was, we had 3 scenarios with a smart glass and a normal smartwatch as an accessory. So, and people preferred the smartwatch plus in a hypothetical scenario because then they saw, okay, if I can carry it around, like now with the Gear S, I can do calls and whatever I want to do with the function of a telephone at my wrist. They see the value in the use cases.
So, some of our first generation watches, they were tethered devices. They required you to utilize your smartphone for connectivity. So, some of the manufacturers today are still kind of in that mode of usage pattern. What do you think consumer will feel about having a tethered device or a more like, in this case, an untethered experience?
Mm-hmm. So, based on our research, we are seeing, about 40% of consumers say that they just want a standalone device. So they don't want to have 2 devices or a tethered device. And then we see, kind of another chunk of consumers that are neutral. So they're on the fence. They don't really know if they can live with, just one device on their wrist or if they can, live with, having 2 different devices. So I think it's interesting. I think it shows that there's interest there in having one device, but I think the use case really needs to be proven to consumers. Is it something that is going to kind of fit within their lifestyle just to have one device, or is there going to be enough access to the applications or the services that I need with one device, or am I really going to need to have 2? So I would say there's interest, but kind of the verdict is still out, and it needs to be proven to consumers.
I think it depends on the demographics as well. I think an accessory device is more targeting at the tech-friendly consumer because he's feeling good of having multiple devices on his body, like a smartphone, a tablet, and then a wristwatch that is only an accessory. But for the mass market, it's to have this unique device. It's then becoming the obvious benefit of having such in comparison to a smartphone.
I mean, I think realistically it needs to be an independent device. Ultimately, it can't always need the smartphone with it. There's a challenge with that, though, which is as soon as it becomes an independent device, it has an independent phone number. So then you lose that identity of a single phone number where you can call me and always reach me. So there needs to be some sort of pairing where my identity follows me, whether I have my phone with me or my watch with me. I still need to be able to get messages, get phone calls. So if I leave my smartphone behind when I go for a run, people shouldn't be trying to think, well, I tried him and I got voicemail. Is that because he's on a different number and trying to do that? So there needs to be some sort of pairing of the number. Then it'll work.
So, I had a chance to talk to Marissa Mir once, and she told me her top 5 applications that she thought for a wearable device. what would you say are the top 5 applications, other than maybe fitness, because at least right now that's what people kind of assume that they do, but beyond sort of fitness tracking, what would you say are the top 5?
So what we have seen in our research in the top 5 was definitely the GPS function, using it as a navigational device. Because then this is another use case which is more convenient to have your navigation routing you to or directing you to a spot you want to go to. It's much more convenient to have it on the wrist and get the directions while you walk than having it on your smartphone and staring at it. So since now only a few smartwatches are capable of doing this, but I think this is an area where we saw a lot of expectations of the consumers are going to, like navigation purposes.
So you name one. What would be like 4 more?
I'll give you another
You can't get them. Get away with that.
So you said mapping, music is definitely another
Music?
one that we see. I think there are kind of 2 answers just to cheat and blur it a bit more. There's what people are saying they want right now, and then what they will want a year or so from now. I mean, I think there's the connection into the home automation solutions, whether it's into your car like the BMW, or being able to walk into the house. You know, right now you can use the digital locks with your smartphone, so you walk into the house and your smartphone allows you to be identified and walk in. It's kind of silly to have that in the smartphone when you can have it on a wrist-based device that's always with you. So I think a connection into the home automation solutions will be important.
I think just, to add to that, I think, kind of much like consumers and the applications that they're using on their smartphone, they also want those similar types of applications on their smartwatch. So I think, social networking, to be able to, share the information that you're collecting, either taking pictures, video, and, kind of and your fitness-related activities, and to be able to share that through your social network channels is also something that consumers want, a kind of a top feature that we see that consumers want.
Are there applications you think maybe is not appropriate for a wearable device?
Yes, video.
Video?
And you get a lot of consumers that when you ask them all of the things they could possibly do with their watch, they do say they want to watch video. I think the reality is that when they try it, they're going to go back to using a 6-inch smartphone instead.
Any other opinions?
Yeah, it's like I've almost tapped on the interface challenge. So a lot of people think, if this device is replacing my smartphone, how will I be able to write text? So using a keyboard or such. And I think this is where, we have seen the panel sessions before, like where coming speech control into play. So I think you should not emphasize on trying to make the best keyboard on that device, but think about how you can get in touch with it with other meanings like voice control or gestures, and so on.
Okay. Let's see. So, one of the things, we think about a lot is, will this become the future electronic identification band, where if, your family is sitting in front of the TV, if I'm the first person, my TV knows it's me. If my, son sits next to me and is wearing his own different band, it knows there's 2 of us in front of it. If I go near my refrigerator, should my refrigerator know it's me and sort of tell me what I like to eat that's in my refrigerator? What do you think about how this might evolve in terms of your identity?
So, first of all, the smart home control really caught the interest of the people we asked. So controlling the TV and using it in the household scored the highest. And then we had the in-car navigation or like the connection with the car. However, as we did this research across several countries, we found out like the identification and the storage of health information, which was much more accepted, for example, in China and the US, while it was a bit, consumers in UK and Germany especially, were a bit reluctant to that feature. So, because they not used to, they're pretty careful in terms of digital fingerprints, so to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a plus and a minus, right? I mean, from the, there you go, I'm a Brit, so it's I automatically think of the digital fingerprint part, and do I really want everything to be tracking me quite so closely and so willingly, where I'm wearing this thing so it can track me? I mean, I personally like to be able to walk away from electronics completely. Probably shouldn't say that on the stage where I'm an analyst in this area, but you know, you want to be able to disconnect occasionally, and that does reduce the ability. Also, I mean, the TV recognizing me, you know, I think that could turn into a nice family fight quite quickly on who gets there first and which device has more power. Maybe if I sit slightly closer, I gain priority or something. Having said that, the pure convenience factor, I mean, I think there are a lot of ways that this device could be your identity. It could ultimately be your phone number. That could be the number that then works with your phone. So it doesn't matter which phone I pick up, the wrist-worn device recognizes it and tells it who it really is. So I could pick up my daughter's phone, it becomes my phone, and it's all cloud-based as possible.
So in your research, you know, you brought up some interesting points regarding, you know, sort of privacy, security of information. Are there any insights that you want to share? That maybe some of your consumers are more hesitant to use the device because, you know, every day you read about some intrusion of data.
Yeah, as I already told, the people in the US and China are much more open-minded and towards that kind of topic, while other countries are a bit more reluctant. That was a central result out of that study. This was also the case for like mobile payment. So I guess in the US, will be even faster adopted by the citizens than maybe in other parts of the world where there's some doubts about it.
Okay.
I think we're a pretty accepting nation. I'm putting my American hat back on. You know, we allow people to take our credit cards. If we go to a restaurant, they take our credit card, they disappear with it, and we come back. I had some friends stay with me recently from England, and as the credit card left, I thought they were going to go chasing after the people to grab their card back. It was such a bizarre concept to them to lose sight of it. So we're kind of used to being tracked to an extent. I think we're an optimistic nation, that we always think that it's for the greater good, rather than the Brits, for example, who always think there's some terrible underlying reason why it's being done. So I think we do worry about it less. You know, we all lose our credit cards or have them stolen, and it's, you know, we go to Home Depot or Target or wherever else, and it gets ripped off, and we're all okay with it. You know, we get a little annoyed, but then we move on.
Yeah, I think from a privacy perspective, I think especially within the context of mobile payments and the security of that, I think there are still some concerns, and I think that's why we've seen just adoption of mobile payment also not be as high as expected. But I think as kind of the technology around mobile payments becomes more secure with chip cards and that the barriers to barriers around privacy and security are kind of mitigated there, then I think that will definitely kind of start to accelerate, adopt kind of growth of mobile payments in that area.
Okay, maybe we'll ask some futuristic thinking questions regarding predictions. So in 2014, we have one more month to go. How many devices do you think were sold in 2014?
So what our forecast people say, they project to be that 4 million smartwatches to be sold until the end of 2014. This is the baseline scenario, and it can vary, like usually in the forecast, between 2.9 million, but also up to 5 million units.
How's that jive with your studies?
So I don't have an actual number, but I'll tell you that this is the year of activity trackers, not the year of smartwatches. We're going to see a huge number of activity trackers sold in the next couple of months. The pricing is really good. There's been a wide range of pricing now. You can buy a $29.99 activity tracker or a $200 activity tracker. the smartwatches will start to take off much more next year. I think it'll take one more year of us buying a cheaper product before we move into something more expensive with more function.
I think, definitely for the smartwatch category, as we see, the introduction or the launch of Apple's watch next year, I think that will really start to accelerate kind of more competition in the area. When we've asked consumers, if they would be interested in purchasing an Apple Watch, many of them, kind of strong majority have said yes, they definitely are interested in purchasing it. And, it's because they're Apple loyalists. They really think that the quality of the product will be better. And so I think just with that kind of interest level there, it'll start to spur more competition and just more interest for the category overall, which is great because, we definitely need to see kind of more growth and among the kind of the top brands in the market.
Yeah, one interesting question here is, in terms of what is it going to take, what demographics will it take to really make this market sort of begin to explode? I mean, you talked about sort of the current demographics, sort of the early adopter white male. That doesn't seem like it's going to explode the market in itself. What do you think? I mean, what are the segments that might really make this happen?
From a manufacturer perspective, I would recommend to think female, because most of the devices I think that are currently on the market are more appealing to male people, because they are like clunky, and normally the wrist of women is smaller, so you have to adapt to the habits and to the likes of women. On the other hand, I think the two big hurdles are the competition on your wrist. So most of the people would have to sacrifice their normal wristwatch, and if you wear a Rolex or something like a status symbol, so there's pretty hard competition on your wrist. And the other thing I guess still is the functionality of a smartphone. So consumers don't really see the need for a smartwatch because they always answer, I can do the same with my smartphone, because they've never tried out a smartwatch. So I'm talking also from my own perspective. Once I got hold of a smartwatch and tried it out over weeks, I became aware of the benefits of having. So you read in the information that it can notify you about a new email. What does that give me? I can also pull out my smartphone, but it's much more convenient to have it on your wrist. And this is something. So the main target for breakthrough is educating the customer. And I think what we've also seen, one of the major purchase driver for a smartwatch is still price concerns. It wasn't ranked the highest among the or the tech-friendly people, but in the broad sample, it was the main purchase driver. And I think this is something with a lower entry-level pricing model for some models, there would be a higher adoption in the mass market because people are more willingly to try it out and then see the benefits, and then I guess they will upgrade to a higher model.
Actually, you bring up a good point with the competition on the wrist, because if you think of that audience that's buying it, and yes, it's male and it's millennial, one of the reasons why they may be more open to it is because they've stopped wearing a watch. So they actually have that free real estate. I mean, the challenge is convincing people who wear a watch that they need to upgrade their watch to something that's a smartwatch instead. That's always a little harder to do.
I think, the key to, kind of thinking about how to increase adoption of smartwatches is, it's really an accessory. So, just like you accessorize your phone with a case and a cover, you need to be able to accessorize with your smartwatch. So having those different options of look and feel, especially if we're going to try to attract more females, I think that's going to be important. So I would say kind of being able to have it, thinking about it an accessory and how often as a female you want to change that based on what you're wearing or the activity that you're doing. I think that's definitely going to be important. And then obviously the functionality too, just being able to use it and kind of have it fit within your daily life. So if you're a mom and you need to be able to track your kid's schedule and you need to get in touch with your kind of network of friends, or if you're just working professional, I think those are the use cases that are needed in order to just increase adoption among females.
And actually, another thing is not just the device itself, but it's how it's distributed. So the activity trackers took off because everybody started selling them. You could walk into a Kohl's and you could buy Fitbit. So, it really boosted Fitbit's sales volume because you weren't going to a specific type of store looking for this device. It was there wherever you went. I think when you look at the early smartwatches, a lot of retailers don't sell them, and those that do still struggle to really work out where to put them in the store. So they're not necessarily with the phones. If you look at a Best Buy, there's a whole different segment where they put all of the activity tracker smartwatches. That's not necessarily the part of the store you would normally go to. So it needs to be pulled more into, being seen with the smartphones and being in these high volume locations in stores and in many, many, many more types of stores.
One of the things I was surprised that none of you actually said in terms of sort of the growth demographic are teenagers. I don't know about you, but when my kids ask for technology, it's really hard as a parent to say no.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of surprised about that. Is there a reason you think they're not included?
I guess it's because the typical, according to our information, the typical demographics were between 25 and 44. That's the typical, the tech-friendly. I think I missed that one out when I was telling you, is a male tech-friendly guy between 25 and 44. So.
Wow.
I guess it depends who's paying for it, doesn't it? I mean, if you're paying for it, then sure.
I don't know about you, but when a teenager asks, it usually comes out of your pocket, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my comment to that. I think it really just comes down to price. And, teenagers who can afford $150 or more, smartwatch, that's a pretty high price for a device. And especially if they have to choose between a phone and a smartwatch. So I think it's really price is a barrier.
And it depends, again, what they want to do. I mean, I've got 2 teenage daughters and one that's pre-teenage. The primary thing they use their smartphone for is either Snapchat, which I guess you could do with this, but they want to be able to type in very quickly. And the other thing is consuming video. I mean, they're constantly watching video, and that's something that won't work on it. So given the choice of a better phone or a smartwatch, my kids will pick the better phone, at least for now.
Interesting.
Just to add, I was sitting next to a guy in the audience before this, and he wrote an app for the Gear S for accessing the YouTube service directly. So it's possible.
I'll tell you what app I use on my Gear S all the time is a new application. We've been partnering with Yelp.
Yep.
And,
Right.
It's so convenient to find restaurants nearby with reviews, and with the built-in map capability, it gives me walking directions to the restaurant, and I can immediately call a restaurant also from here because it has the radio built in to call. So it's kind of interesting. I think that's why I go back to what are the sort of the core applications and services that really differentiates using one of these versus always pulling one of these out of your pocket, right? It's really a different use model.
It's much more contextual.
Maybe you can define what contextual means. At least in your view.
It's those moments of, exactly what you said. You're walking down the street and you want to find somewhere close by right now. It's that pure convenience. So maybe it is the restaurant, and especially if you're then going to use navigation rather than pulling out your phone to get there, the convenience of just glancing at your wrist occasionally is much more useful. No one wants to walk, go back 10 years, pre-smartphone-ish days, no one wanted to be seen walking down the street with a map, right? Now none of us want to be seen walking down the street with a large phone in front of us as we're walking around. So that kind of, very quick, right now kind of instances are useful.
I would say, like location-based, services is really kind of an interesting application. I think, that's definitely an area to explore. So, maybe it's around venues, or, say you're going to a baseball game and there might be different, notifications that, businesses around might want to try to target people in that way. So I think kind of location-based services. I think that kind of ties back to contextual. In the moment, you don't want to have to pull out your phone. You have it on your wrist. It's really easy and convenient just to look at that, as a way to take advantage of that.
The second app that I use quite a bit when I travel to our headquarters in Korea is a automatic language translation app, which allows me to speak English into my Gear S and then it comes out in Korean. So, that's why I think for developers in the audience, the creativity of coming up with solutions that may not be as appropriate for big pocket-sized devices, but maybe way appropriate for something that's always accessible is something to think about. I don't know if you have an opinion on how to think about some of this stuff.
I think so. Developers should not try to put the smartphone directly on the smartwatch, but think about the use cases or different contexts where like an information is needed. Like I think location-based services is one of the major advantages because you always have to look up and look for a building or whatever. And once you pull out your smartphone and look down, you maybe get caught by a car or something. So it's much more convenient in these type of contexts. So I think so developers should not try to build like the same apps that you have on a smartphone on the watch, but think about how you can make use of these sensors and even on the feedback with the vibration and stuff to maybe guide you through a place or something that you might have not even take a look on your watch because it's guiding you with different tactile information or impulses.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth remembering that, with the smartphone, when the smartphone was first in existence, we all focused on what's the killer app that will drive this market. And the answer at the end of the day was there was no such thing. There were just, a million killer apps that all were relevant to particular segments of the market, such as your translation one. And I think it's going to be the same thing on the watch. There won't be one magical thing that makes everyone rush out and buy it. There'll be a million of them. I absolutely agree. I think on the haptic side, I think that's very important. I think it's too easy for us to focus on what we can do on that tiny screen rather than thinking about what we can do without really cramming too much into that tiny screen and using other ways of communicating instead.
So maybe we'll close by asking you to say, let's put on our crystal ball. Let's look at the crystal ball. We're in 2016, 2017, a couple years from now. Where is this all headed? What do you think, where the market's going to be? What kind of devices do you expect?
That's always a dangerous question. Thanks.
Maybe
if I think back 3 years, I would
right
look really stupid right now as to what I would have thought 3 years ago. I mean, look, it's clearly it's in the very, very early days with the smartwatch adoption. I mean, we're talking 2-3% of the US population. It's going to grow quite rapidly. There will be this inflection point probably in about 12 to 18 months when we really start more and more people adopting them. The great thing about this is it's such a visual device that as soon as one person has it, their friends see it. And you don't need that many advocates before it becomes this just real expansion of the market. So it's going to be a product where, as I said, there's no killer app. There are a million killer apps. Everyone will have their own separate justification for why they're doing it. It won't be to tell the time, which will be great. We'll move beyond that. I think I'm pretty safe in saying that one.
We'll quote you on that one.
Okay, thanks. I'll be wrong.
I would say, just to add to that, I think, it'll be really interesting just to see the different types of applications that are developed over the course of the next, 12 to 18 months and really, how that will, help consumers track information. So just around fitness, I think, kind of fitness tracking, biometric tracking, being able to track that, house that in a cloud-based service, and then being able to share that with professionals. I think, those are the types of services that are going to create engagement with consumers and really help to, kind of drive that interest and adoption of, this additional device that, that we're asking them to purchase and wear on their wrist. So I think, kind of along with the, kind of design and functionality and kind of blurring of devices between, smartwatches and fitness bands, I think we'll see some consolidation there, and then kind of a growth of many different types of applications that really kind of help consumers better track what they're doing in their lives.
Exactly. I think the convergence is the main driver. Convergence on the one hand on the industry, so the convergence of tech, health, and fashion to be put together to overcome that hurdle with the competition on the wrist. And on the other hand, that you see also players in the market who entered from very different points of perspective, like we have seen Fitbit entering from the pure fitness tracker, so I'm wearing this so to say, dumb sensor on my wrist. But if you have watched the news, they just announced like a new device that's more akin to a smartwatch actually. While on the smartwatch side, Samsung has the S Health and investing in research with the sensors and stuff. So it converges to the wrist and to the smartwatch being like left over. We still think there will be a market for fitness tracker because of the single purpose and the low price. There will even be mass adoption of those, but the core market maybe in the next 2016-17 will be, if it comes to the wrist, will be a smartwatch. Yeah.
Great. Well, I want to thank Eddie, Jan, and Karina for the insights. And I'm sure if you have any other questions after we stop here, you can come up and ask them, and they'll give you their insights. So thank you for attending. Appreciate it, and fill out your surveys. Thank you.
Thank you.